thanks everybody for coming tonight and being patient with us as we get started. There's a clipboard for attendance. If you would please sign that, that would be most helpful for the record. The first thing on our agenda typically is minutes. We don't have those for tonight, so we're going to go into old business. On the agenda for old business, the first thing is to hear the Janet Edelstein public meeting on a commercial application for the goods. And I would like to take this opportunity to apologize to the town on behalf of the planning board. We had taken this application before and made a decision without having properly notified the abutters. And we want to make sure we do this the correct way. We want to take action doing it as the commercial development ordinance had been amended in 2017. On page 12, it does refer to the proper notification of the abutters. So that's why we're here tonight. Does anybody from the planning board have anything else to say about that? Or do you have anything you want to add? I don't want to miss anything, but just want to make sure we're treating this fairly. And in doing so, Mrs. Edelstein, I want to apologize to you and also thank you for your patience going through this. Andy, thank you for going through this. So really do appreciate it. So with that in mind, I'd like to go through the application as we have before with the information presented to us so that abutters would have a chance to hear the information that's being presented in an open and honest, transparent way. So that's where we are.
Peter, do we need to go through line by line through the entire application, or would it suffice to provide enough information to the residents in the area of this proposal to maybe ask Andy to give us a quick summary of what's going to be developed, the use, an overview.
I think that's a very good notion.
And then get people's input.
Sure. So I think an executive summary or summary with room for questions and answers from abutters might be a really good thing. But for the abutters who might be present, sirs, just to let you know, the applicant had come in before. We had gone in through there's a checklist that we followed. And at one meeting, we identified where there were more information needed. And in the subsequent meeting, they filled in the gaps and presented that. So as a matter of public record, we do have that if you would like to see what those items are. But at this point, I would like to make sure to give the applicant and Andy perhaps a chance to give an overview of the project. Would that be okay, Andy, to do that? Yeah. Okay. All you.
Okay. Yeah, so this is the property of 56 Main Street, just north of the Sunset Grill, and there's the old Saxon house, the red house there that no longer has a blue tarp on the roof. And the proposal is to utilize the first floor, probably just under 12,000 square feet. It's going to be used as retail space. Second floor is going to be used for storage. They're also replacing the septic system, and they're going to construct some parking. And so as far as the parking goes, in the driveway, there's room for 2 spaces. One regular parking space and 1 handicap size parking space. And then there's going to be constructed a gravel driveway that's going to go from the existing driveway. The entrance is going to be in the same spot off of West Road where it is now. And DOT in their project has accommodated a curb cut there, and the sidewalks are going to have the ramps for handicapped. And so that's going to still be the same entrance in the same spot. and then there's gonna be a gravel driveway that's gonna go in front of the building. And then right against the north side of the building, there's gonna be 3 parking spaces to get up to what the town requires for a retail facility of that floor area. And so there's probably gonna be about 3,000 square feet of new gravel going in there. And the DOT is gonna do away with, when you come out the West Road now, you can go right straight on to Main Street. They're totally doing away with that. You're gonna have to come out to tee in to Route 27, right where the big Christmas tree is there. So it's gonna open up a lot of non-street area in front of the facility that's not there now. So that's essentially the gist of the project. And it's only going to be run during daytime hours. As far as lighting goes, there's really no need for lighting due to the fact that the business is operated during daylight hours, and there's plenty of light coming from the Sunset Grill property to the south and from the streets to the east. They may put like a little residential type light motion sensor for those 3 parking spaces. But that's about it. As far as signage goes, there's going to be just a sign on the face of the building, less than 10 square feet. And as far as stormwater goes, there's only going to be that 3,000 square foot gravel area that's going in new, and there's plenty of existing buffering and retention and treatment as you go down the hill into the off the back lawn into the rough. And there's actually a low area there that's got cattails growing in it, so it'll receive that storm water and address it properly so it doesn't race to the lake. The water coming up that would normally come onto the site from the roads above is captured in West Road and Route 27, and if my memory serves me correctly, I think that goes through a pipe that comes out into Long Pond right by the Altar's house down, I can't remember the name of the road, but you go in by the Great Pond Boat Barn and then a couple of places north of there. And let's see. The only other notable thing about that property is the water source is the same as the Sunset Grill. There's a little well house there that's on our property that the Sunset Grill has an easement to maintain and draw water and all that. And due to the fact that the Sunset Grill is a public facility, that's a public water supply. And so we have to make sure we address that with the proposed replacement septic system, which is underway right now. So that's essentially the gist of the project. I'd be glad to address any questions for anyone.
Sure. So for the abutters of the property, do you have any specific concerns or questions?
Yeah, I live right next door, 58 Main Street. My name is George Hoy. I have a couple of questions on that parking. They're going to go across the front of her house to get to the parking. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, the state is fixing that road all up, new sidewalks and everything. You got a lot of kids and people go to that Sunset Grill in the summertime, and you're gonna have cars going through there, and I don't think it's a very good idea. Also, if she's gonna have parking on that side, I want a fence on the property line, because I gotta park, my own driveway comes right in there, and they can go right out my driveway.
So am I hearing you correctly that your property is to the south by one?
North.
North, I'm sorry, north by one. And you're requesting that they would put in a fence on the
north
edge of their
property line.
driveway or area? Is that correct?
Yeah, because I know she goes, not against her, she knocked on my door this winter and wanted to know if they could use my driveway to get to her property. And I told her no.
So there's a question for.
Okay. Yeah, there's two parts. One is, yes, the driveway is going to go in front of the house. It's totally on the client's land. It's outside the road. The yellow is the gravel area. The orange is the proposed new sidewalk that DOT is going to construct. There's pretty good separation there between those two. As far as the parking relative to the Hoy boundary, it's going to be about 35 to 40 feet from the edge of the gravel parking area to the boundary. So I don't think there's a significant chance of people wanting to drive
They will.
across 40 feet of lawn.
They will.
Just to
They've done it already.
Okay, but I think, we could probably do something that would make it apparent to cars that they can't go off the end of your driveway and keep going for 40 feet over onto the neighbor's land.
Eddie, could you
Whether it
refresh
be
my
some
memory? What's the
wheel
estimated traffic that you're anticipating, the number of vehicles per day?
Let's see. I know we addressed it. It's pretty minimal.
We did talk
It was
about
like
it.
10-ish.
From
what I remember.
Right, because we talked about, I think you had a conversation with DOT about that.
And so DOT is designing our entrance.
Right, and to design it, they want to know, estimated traffic.
Right.
And I just can't quote it off the top of my head, but I do recall a conversation about it.
Yeah, I know I had asked Janet, and yeah, I know it's in the paperwork somewhere. We had to fill out, there we go, about 10 trips per day.
Yeah. Good call. So it sounds like, so for one aspect of that, they're estimating 10 trips per day of vehicles going in or out of the parking area that is being designated on the property. And it sounds like there's some agreement or some consensus that they could work towards something that would be obvious in terms of stating to potential drivers that they would not be continuing on past that driveway to get to something else.
I think the only time I'll be satisfied is the fence up there for my own protection.
Is your concern just the fact that somebody might trespass onto your property?
They drive out my driveway. I got a circular driveway.
Yeah, I think we could.
Janet, there is a garden area that has stones, that I plan on keeping up that's further closer to his house. I can't
I won't be
understand how
satisfied until
anybody
you
would
fence.
drive that way. Doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, that could be like, anybody could start saying, you know, anybody that they're gonna drive over their property. I mean, you know, chances are, yeah. I don't know.
Perhaps like a couple of concrete wheel stops
Oh, I can put stuff there.
at the edge of gravel.
Yeah, I don't have the money for a fence. I mean, this whole thing is
Yeah,
really knew what this whole thing is costing.
and if you look in if you remember, we did 2 applications. One was the old, one was the new. In the first one, the wetlands inventory photo shows it pretty well. You can see the Sunset Grill with its bright blue roof. And then Janet's house is the next one. And then past the house, you can see that there's a fair amount of vegetation there, and you can even spot a couple of rocks out there that would get in the way.
Could you bring that up here?
Sure. Yeah, ours was, since it's a photocopy, it's not.
We have black.
You should have color.
I know that.
Major color.
Yes, you did.
So, grill, Janet's garage, Janet's house, and then the whole driveway is
Right there.
Yeah.
And you're concerned about people, I mean, the parking's gonna be in the front here, your concerns are gonna drive through
They're gonna
the
drive
lawn.
through the front and come along, my parking, and they got, this garden they got there is very small. It's only about 20 feet long, and 10 feet wide if it's that.
I
With
live
the
in
rocks.
the trailer on top of the hill.
I think, on the edge of the gravel parking area, sketches buried in that same one.
Nice to meet you.
There's some concrete wheel stops that would
Yeah, I've been there
keep
for,
it from continuing on.
Well, during the wet part of the year, that would keep.
And I know the
That's running up
Sunset,
your
the
lawn,
Sunset
too.
Grill is concerned about them parking in their yard too, in front of the building. Cause they'll have, if that happens, they're gonna have them towed, I know that.
Sorry.
so I used to, when you come down the hill.
Mr.
Have
Moore.
you disposed of that?
We've heard that, but I wanted to hear what you have to say.
Yes. Richard Bourne, I'm the abutter on the west side of the lot. And I don't have any particular concerns about the plan and so forth. But I would like to go back to the process that you used to determine that this was a complete application and that this was in fact a valid commercial lot. I believe I've lived there 31 years at this point, and in that period, I know of no business that ever occupied that property. The lot is a non-conforming commercial lot. It is a conforming residential lot. I believe that property was used exclusively for residential purposes all while I've been there. Now, there could have been someone before that that in fact ran a legitimate business. I believe Fred Saxton ran a what you might call hobby business, or he ran a little shop where he did work on outboard motors and general shop work and so forth. But I don't think it was ever at a level which would constitute a commercial, pre-existing commercial business. So what I would like to know from you is what evidence was presented to in fact validate that this is an appropriate lot for commercial development, in that it does not have the sufficient road frontage. I believe it has 170 feet road frontage. and the minimum lot size ordinance requires 200. So my first question is, was there any evidence presented, and if so, what was it, to the effect that this was previously a commercial lot? Because the only way I can see that it could be a commercial lot now is if it had been grandfathered. And to grandfather it would require evidence of prior use. And immediately prior to the sale and for a considerable time before that, there would have been only residential use of the property, which would in fact have potentially extinguished any prior commercial use, which would also be something that would need to be considered.
It's a good question. I know for my recollection when we started going through this was the reviewing that it in fact had been a residential property before, and I think there had been no question there had been no evidence saying there was anything other than residential.
That's all, since I've been there.
Right.
And I've been in town 57 years there.
So, speaking for myself, I know that I was thinking it was a residential property previously. And I know for myself, I was thinking about how this would be applicable, this commercial review ordinance would be applicable because what they were talking about doing was the conversion of an existing building. So on page 3, for applicability 1C, the conversion of an existing building in whole or in part from residential use to non-residential use, where the area converted exceeds the square footage threshold established above. So I don't know. Yes, that would be that because we're over 1,200 square feet in the first floor, right?
Just under.
So it's 12 something, 1250.
1,200 or 12,000?
Well,
I think I read 12,000.
yes, and that's off by a factor of 10. So I think it was just a typo.
1,200, wow.
Yeah.
Right, yes, just
Right.
under. Somewhere in here, the assessor card is probably in the package also. But as far as the lot goes, it's an existing non-conforming lot for both residential and commercial.
How do you determine that it's non-conforming for commercial?
It's an existing non-conforming lot,
Yes.
which means you could not create that lot from scratch in this day and age.
True.
So it's what they call an existing non-conforming lot. It predates the ordinance.
Yeah.
And the criteria for residential and commercial lot sizing is the same now. It's 200 feet of frontage, 40,000 square feet. It used to be 300 for commercial and 60,000 square feet. So the criteria are the same, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial. The lot dimensions are the same. And the comprehensive plan, this is designated as the village district. And that's essentially where they recommended going to the 40,000 square feet, and I guess it was followed through on. In the village area, the village district, encouraged and allowed uses in the village district. Small retail stores are right there. That's where the comprehensive plan says those things should be cited in the town of Belgrade. Yeah, so page 108 is where it is.
I don't think there's any question that this is in conformance with the comprehensive plan.
Right.
Right.
I think the question is it in conformance with the minimum lot size ordinance?
Correct.
And I don't know, Andy, if I sometimes wonder if we have the right ordinances in front of us. I don't know when the last time this ordinance was amended. It might have been 2010, but the version I have that I was given when I joined the board 2 years ago still has 60,000 square feet as the minimum.
Correct.
For commercial.
It does
In any
have,
case, we exceed that.
yeah,
We're 76,000 square feet.
there's no question about the area.
And 200 feet of road frontage.
That's the ordinance as it appears online,
Right.
And how much road frontage is it?
170.
Is
Right,
that,
so-
is that correct?
Right, so
I mean, I.
the road frontage makes it an existing non-conforming lot for residential.
Right, yeah, I was just dealing with part A of the question. I hadn't gotten to part B
The threshold for both
yet.
is the same.
I don't know the answer to the, I haven't gotten that far yet, but. I guess, Gary, I mean, this is actually an ordinance under which, you issued the permits for. Do you have any insights into this?
I have to tend to agree with Andy when he says it's a non-conforming lot, whether it's a residence or a commercial. And like he said, the comp plan does encourage this type of development in the village district.
And the non-conformity is the same, whether it's residential or commercial. It's 30 feet of frontage.
Yeah.
Is what is lacking under both.
And I know, I can't cite specifics, but I believe that there's other residential properties in the village district that have converted to commercial uses as well. I can't think of a specific, but it seems like that's what we the board, have done in the past.
Dick, to answer your question maybe a little bit more fully in terms of the process we went through as we went through the checklist that we use to determine that we have a complete application. One of the findings we need to make, and one of the items on the checklist is the application and the proposal in conformance with all the other town ordinances in addition to.
Right.
And we had made a finding that it was on, and at least speaking for myself, on the assumption that this was a non-conforming lot for both residential and commercial. So that's the finding we made at that time.
Okay.
I would agree that was my thinking as well.
So in fact, what you were dealing with was a change of use.
Yes,
At some point-
and that's what in fact triggers the application, the applicability of the commercial development review ordinance is the conversion from a residential to a commercial use.
Right.
With 1,200 square feet of commercial space.
Okay, I have no problem with the application per se. I just wanted to verify that in fact the proper elements were there for determination that it was a legitimate application prior to getting into the details of the commercial review.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Very much. Thank you for that, Nick. Really appreciate that. Mr. Hoy, I want to make sure we address your concern that you had brought up. It seemed like there was some.
I'll only be satisfied with the fence there.
So the applicant is they've indicated they're willing to put up some things that would act as barriers. I heard some positive movement there. What do you call it?
Concrete wheel stops.
Concrete wheel. Could you describe the concrete wheel stop just briefly?
I'm just trying to think where they are.
Just like curbs?
Yeah, they're 8 feet long. They're about 8 inches high. They're kind of trapezoidal shape, probably like 4 inches on the top, 10 inches on the bottom. So they're,
It looked a
you
lot
don't
nicer.
drive over them without.
It looked a
hanging off
lot
your car.
nicer. It looked a lot nicer with a fence there instead of the brick with that concrete. I was looking for the beauty part of it to make it look halfway decent.
Planning board members, thoughts about proceeding from this point? We have
Yeah.
had some comments, some level of agreement to address one of the comments.
Well, I'm hearing something a little different than what I heard initially, that your concern is not only people trespassing by driving through the parking area onto your property, but also now for the visuals.
Yeah.
The ordinance does not require any visual buffer between properties in the village district because it's a village. There are none now. But I was wondering if maybe a better solution, depending on how others felt about this, would be to build on what's already there, which is the rocks and landscaping. Put in some additional rocks that would prevent any vehicles from going from one property to the next if somebody was drunk or something, and add some additional landscaping there, dealing with a little bit of the visual. I'm not talking trees. I'm talking,
Well, I just asked Janet, would she be willing to put a few cedar trees in there as well for screening. So the wheel stop would be mechanical,
yep,
and then
the cedar would
the
be the
cedars
visual.
would be aesthetic.
So,
I mean, that's going above and beyond the ordinance, what the ordinance requires.
Right. I'm glad you brought up what the ordinance requirements are, because that's what we can act on, the ordinance requirements. Things that would be above and beyond that might be up to an applicant to do on their own, or agreements somewhere else. But they've been
Act of good faith.
act of good faith, maybe some collaboration between parties. It doesn't matter how it gets there, as far as the requirements are concerned. I just want to make sure we're addressing your concern now. And the applicants have offered two things, a mechanical and visual buffer to prevent people from driving and entering your property. And I'm wondering if that act of what they're offering would go a long way in helping address your concern. They've been very kind and generous in doing this tonight. Would you please consider it while we continue on?
Beg pardon?
Would you please consider their offer as we continue on with this?
No, I can't. I won't be happy. It'll look a lot nicer with a fence there, that's it, with all that brickwork and everything else.
Keep in mind, there's no requirement for a fence. For
I know that,
offer
I know that,
at all.
but that's my opinion. And I won't be satisfied unless.
Right, I hear you.
Now, I have a question. How much, this is, the parking that's going in is gonna be strictly used for parking. There's not gonna be stuff out there, antiques and stuff out there. How much spillover is gonna be coming out of the house onto the front and onto the side? as the last antique shop had. I think that's a lot of the concern.
Minimum.
I mean, if
You know,
we're,
I can't even figure the layout until the road even goes in, but, you know. Won't be a problem.
my point is, if we're improving 1,200 square feet, and she's using 1,000 square feet as a driveway,
No, I won't.
that's 2,200 square feet. And people milling around next to George Horace Hall.
No, nothing will be put on that side, there's no reason for it. Nothing. I understand his concerns and I don't blame him, but I can't afford a fence. You know, if I could, I would.
So it sounds like the answer to your question is that the spillover would be minimal, if anything.
Right.
It would be contained to the house, is that what you're saying?
No, my form of advertising and that I have done is to put some items out. But remember now, I'm gonna be way off of the main road now. You know, so little signs don't do it sometimes.
So as opposed to using another part of the lawn or parking area, it sounds like that's not what the applicant is saying that they would be doing. Parking would take place in the parking area, business on the first floor. It sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, you might have some
Items out in the lawn.
items on the front
Right.
towards the street.
Right. Exactly.
So if I'm hearing
Typical
that
of
right,
any, yeah, which is typical of a lot of retail shops that are doing antiques. But
Good
not an overflow. I wanted to bring in a picture of this award-winning artist that she did this incredible watercolor for my shop. And all outside stuff. So some people didn't get it, but quite a few people did. And I had many people taking pictures of it. It wasn't all thrown up there. I will bring it in. It's in my card. I'll bring it in to show you.
so does that help answer your question? Okay, what other, are there any other comments or concerns relative to what the applicants have brought forward for tonight? We talked a little bit about process, we heard your concerns, sir. Is there anything else? Do you have anything else to add? No? So for the planning board members, what is your preferred method of going forward on this now? We've
Well, first off, procedurally, if we're thinking about making any changes of our approval and the conditions of our approval, that we need to reopen the application. Okay, so there's the procedural side of it. Secondly, the one issue that we have before us is the possibility of trespass onto the neighbor's property, into this gentleman's property by vehicles. We don't have any authority to require a fence in the village. Nor do we have authority to, there's no standard requiring a visual buffer between properties any more than there is between the front of the structure and the building. I think that's correct. Maybe I better double check that last statement of mine. But I think that's what we're left with as an outstanding issue
I mean, I'm also in agreement that it sounds like we probably want to open up this application again, go through it, make sure that we are good, knowing that there's at least one item that we need to address. So that way we can do that in front of the taxpayers, and maybe here we do that in talking about.
I did.
What that one item is.
The item from Mr. Ford about parking, we want to make sure we get that correct. Because we think we understand what we're doing relative to what the ordinance has for requirements. We think we know what that limit is. I just want to be sure.
So that's the part you're opening up, just to do with them. And can I understand that you were saying that I'm not required to even do any sort of buffer? That's not.
Well, that's what I was just double checking.
I want to double check on that.
Right.
The commercial development review ordinance
Right.
has several sections. We just want to get to that one
Yeah.
to make sure we're saying it correctly, we're thinking correctly about that.
Okay, good.
Well, then we say something in front of trees.
Yeah, so I was correct about in between properties.
What page?
I'm on page 30 and 31.
Okay.
And the application included the planting of a couple trees, and also there's going to be shrubbery between the road, the highway, and thereby and the structure, and thereby meeting the minimal vegetative screening requirement of the ordinance. But there is nothing required between one property and a abutting property.
And that's probably what we're seeing from page 29, where it says screening.
Yeah,
space
on the bottom
roads.
of page 30, screening of neighboring properties, and I'll read it. Screening of neighboring properties shall be required whenever a proposed non-residential use abuts a residential development, multifamily building or home, and is not located within the village district.
So this is what we were thinking before, that in the village is not required.
Right.
I mean, the premise of this, of course, is, again, going back to the comprehensive plan, that particularly Belgrade Lakes Village is intended to be the commercial center of town.
I am willing to work out something with George, but I have to tell him right now, I cannot afford a fence. But you've lived there for a lot of years, and I do not wish to upset you, or just change your, environment. I know you're out in your porch and stuff, and I think you know that, what I've been dealing with, the idea that I bought this property because the big sign said commercial, and I was lied to by brokers that told me this was commercial. And the excuse
Well, I
that
told you
wasn't-
about that when you told me, I said, you got a good lawsuit,
You did
that
say
the people have sold it to you,
That's right.
your real estate, and you say, well, she's a friend of mine, I don't want to hurt her feelings.
That's right, I did. She was a friend of mine. She was a friend of mine.
But you had the right to go back and give that property back to them. Because it wasn't commercial.
Thanks, George. It is getting that aggravating, but that's what, that's my story. This whole thing has been insane, and I feel like I've been lied to. Big sign, commercial, all over my application, commercial, no problem, you can put a shop in. I asked.
Now it's costing you money which you shouldn't have had to spend.
A lot, right, so.
I can attest to that.
Yeah, he can.
I'm sure.
Here, under the parking standards, we can require wheel stops
Okay.
as at the end of the parking. But again, if outside of, you know, our proceedings, the parties want to come to some kind of a agreement on plantings, that's, you know, that's great, but I don't believe we can require it.
Right. So we've stated that before at least once, and I think it's fair to state it again, that as far as the authority of this planning board for the purposes of issuing a permit, we have no authority to require plantings
Or a fence.
or a fence. There's nothing that we would have for authority to do that. I just want to make sure to set your expectations as clearly as I can relative to that aspect, because I know that's something that concerns you.
The ditch could be put across there too, to keep it from going through.
Yep, that's another mechanical way of doing it. They've come up, also have an offer for another one.
And how about constructing a ditch across there so they don't drive through?
George, would you even want that, a ditch?
But
Would
that-
you even want a ditch? They're suggesting a ditch.
I'm just thinking of the stormwater aspect,
Yeah, well,
of focusing water
Yeah.
and then having to deal with it.
I think it's more visual and I don't think the ditch would be the answer, and shrubbery, if they're willing to agree with it, that would go 5-6 feet tall. Something of that sort.
So I think we should probably go through, we talked about opening up the application previously, you know, we should do that, and then, I guess, pay attention to the aspects that we can and have authority over when it comes to parking.
Actually, I don't think we need to, myself. I mean, I think what we're looking at here is unless, you know, people insist upon it, that we start the process from the beginning again. I think we need to listen to concerns that have been raised, address them to the extent we can within the confines of the authority that the ordinance provides us. And then ask for amendments to the application as appropriate. Rather than, you know, going through the entire application right from the get-go again,
Right.
starting right over from, you know,
Okay.
step A.
I agree.
Frankly, I'm not sure that's fair to the applicant.
Right, but I think getting to the part about parking though, that part.
Yeah, focusing on the parking, I mean, I think, you know, we've already heard that there's a willingness on the part of the applicant to provide some kind of barrier to the vehicles.
So, what page was parking?
Well, I was looking at page 26, which is layout of stalls and aisles. Little D, bumpers and wheel stops shall be provided where appropriate. I mean, it's a little off target, but doesn't speak to damage to landscape materials. So it would be paragraph 3, little e, on page 26.
Okay. So I think, if we address that, matching that to we have the checklist that, I guess, talks about the things that are required, right? So you want the
That's a sign.
I was trying to match what paragraph 3.
Oh,
would be to something that's already been submitted, so we could tie the things together.
Oh,
And make
okay.
it very clear.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what,
That's the one aspect that we care about,
saying that.
that we have, so I just wanna make sure we tackle this appropriately.
I mean, in the findings of fact, there is one, I believe, I don't have that in front of me, but regarding parking and the like, so that, if that's what you're asking, and
I think that's what I wanna get to. Findings of fact.
and then in the checklist, you know, parking is part and parcel of the site development plan.
Can we just have them on the site development plan on the original application, draw in the barriers? And possibly draw in some shrubbery on the north side, and have them sign it when we're done with it.
Part of that, I think, not the shrubbery, I don't think we can require that. Well, we can't, not in the village district. If they want to agree to that, that's fine.
Or if they want to propose it, then we could approve it.
Sure.
Above and beyond. But I agree with Craig, you know, a way forward would be for basically an amendment to the existing application.
That would cover it, because that's the only thing that we have authority to, in this case, based on what's been presented, would address the concern legally from the ordinance, from the authority, and that would be in line with what we're talking about. So what we're saying is an amendment to the application by including wheel stops in the parking area, if that would be acceptable to you.
And cedars or something like that, if that you're so amenable.
If
We can't require it though.
We can't require it.
So how,
And if you want to take a moment to confer with your client.
my concern is that the application get reopened not get reopened, and if so, to the absolute smallest extent.
Actually, what I was proposing is not to reopen the application, but for you to submit an amendment to the application.
Right.
Just make sure on the site plan and signing it.
Just adding.
Initial on the site plan you submitted.
And that would be the extent of it. It would be amend the application to include wheel stop barriers in the parking area.
So it would basically consist of a letter describing the amendment and a revised drawing from your revision to your drawing of the parking.
So for the mechanics of that, can I just mark up a sketch tonight
Don't need a sketch.
and have,
I don't even know.
or do you want me to read something into the minutes? How do you want to address
Could we
this?
copy? Copy?
Why can't you just draw it on the original copy of the ad and sign it?
Well, procedurally, the problem is then we have to open up the application.
That's exactly what I was getting at.
That's why I was suggesting
We have a
as an
voluntary,
alternative, submitting an amendment to the existing the application that we've already accepted, and essentially to your existing approval by adding the wheel stop, and if you so choose, landscaping.
So we're not reopening the application?
Not what's already been approved.
Right. Okay.
I think that's procedurally okay.
But I think so. I mean, we have, earlier I was talking about opening it up again. I think because we have all this submission material available to us, the only comments or concerns are about one aspect of it, which is as to parking.
Right.
Therefore, I'm under the view, it's my opinion, that nothing changes about the other application material submitted. It is only the artifact about the wheel stop barriers that as concerns came up tonight. Abutters that should have been notified before, now have been notified and are here and present, that we address that concern to the extent that we can. Our authority rests with that.
Here's another alternative. I don't know if it's more palatable or not, but I mean, in effect, we've already reopened the application by, in fact, having this meeting tonight. Some could argue, I guess, a smart lawyer could. I mean, one thing that I think we need to do regardless is reaffirm or not reaffirm our decision from back in December in terms of the findings of fact, the approval, and the conditions of approval. We could do that and add to it another condition requiring a drawing showing the wheel stops and any landscaping that.
Okay. I think, yeah, we can live with that.
Live with that.
Just as long as it
Yeah.
doesn't go any further.
Right. I hear you.
I think we need to reaffirm our decision or not. You know, if people think, other board members think what we've heard tonight isn't enough to overturn the application, you know, that's in the realm of possibilities. I don't think that, but but as a procedural matter, you know, we've heard additional information, new information tonight that we didn't have when we considered and voted on the approval of this application previously. I think we need to legally recognize that.
I like that idea. I like that approach. A great deal. I'm of the same mindset that the information we've heard tonight does not change my opinion about what has been submitted previously that would alter my decision at all. But I do hear the concerns of Mr. Hoy. I would like to have a condition of approval that would include the wheel stops indicated on a plan. That's my opinion. So, other board members, I don't know how you feel.
Just about the same way I feel.
Greg? Therefore, if the board so chooses, I would be at this time ready to hear a motion about affirming or not the decision that we had before, the findings of fact and the conclusion that we drew from that.
Could I see that? Yeah.
Absolutely, this is the original. And,
What's the date of that?
the date on this one, December 5th. 7th, 12/7. 12/7.
I couldn't remember which of them.
Who's gonna?
That's right. I don't. So I'll make a motion to reaffirm our approval with conditions of the goods. with an added, special condition that wheel stops be added to the end of the parking area.
So did you, I know you were having a conversation, I don't mean to interrupt that, but George had a motion that had a condition that the wheel stops be added as to this.
My
Did you get-
concern is that I'm not positive what they look like. I'm into keeping the lawn nice. George, do you understand or have a vision of what wheel stops look like? The concrete, they're saying? You know what I mean?
I
Because
don't
both
like
of you
it.
and I
I don't
agree
like
that
concrete, that's all.
it's what? Because it's like curving. Is that
I
what
just
you,
don't like it.
huh?
I just don't like it. I'm
Yeah,
against
see,
it.
I don't want to be required to put something in that he's gonna say he doesn't like it, anyways, but you agree,
No, it's your
Shrubs and
property,
stuff.
you can do what you want with it, I guess.
there you go.
I withdraw my,
Can you draw your motion?
I withdraw my motion.
Okay.
What did I do?
So how do we proceed with that? We have,
Maybe I misunderstood.
Are you willing to do it, the wheels?
Yeah,
The
if
wheel
he
stops
agrees with it, right,
Okay, I don't think he has to agree to it.
I'm willing to do it.
Okay.
I mean, the alternative, not to design your project for you, but,
Right.
is to put, if you want something more attractive, put some rocks there with landscaping around it.
I think that would
It
be
accomplishes
better.
the same thing. Nobody's gonna drive through it. It'll be,
Right,
and when,
isn't it, yeah,
Well, we could specify wheel stops or equivalent.
Yeah.
And that would allow substituting different materials as long as they accomplish the same objective.
okay, having heard that from the applicant,
all right, let me try this again. Make the motion to reaffirm our decision to approve the application of December 7th with the same conditions as prior, along with an additional condition, specific condition of adding wheel stops, large boulders, or equivalent to impede traffic flow beyond the parking.
okay, perfect. We have a motion on the floor, we need a second. Second. Okay, so we come to a place where we are going to be voting we will either agree to approve or affirm our previous approval with the existing conditions, which had to do, what George made this clear. There were conditions before about having
Right.
a DEP survey, so.
Yep.
His motion doesn't take away that previous
Correct.
condition. He added on to that by saying, the condition for this is to have one of two of those things that were listed there to be used to impede traffic.
Right.
Is that
Just a
clear?
minor supplement.
George,
Peter, I
did
don't
capture it
know
correctly?
if the members of the public that are here would, if they're familiar with what the conditions were
Okay.
prior, if that's of interest to them or not.
That's a good point. I kind of breezed through it, but that's a good point. So previously, when we heard the application, and went through our findings of fact, and then had a decision to approve, the project-specific conditions of approval included this condition, which is for the applicants to have a DEP certified contractor name and number be provided to the CEO, Gary, prior to the start of any construction. So that was one condition. Now, tonight's process, we've included another condition. And that will be a matter of record as well.
And then there's the standard conditions as well.
Right, and then the standard conditions, they're all also listed in here, I can give you a highlight if you would care. No, do you want me to read through the standard conditions at all, Mr. Lloyd?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So standard conditions of approval include, if construction has not been substantially started within 12 months of board approval, This approval and the subsequent permit from the Belgrade CEO are null and void, and referencing Article 4, Section 4. That's number one. Number two, the board approval of this project as described above is limited to that described in the application and depicted in the accompanying plan and other application submissions, except to the extent that the board has expressly indicated in this document that certain depictions may be revised by the applicant without further review and approval by the board. Any changes to the application, site plan, or supporting application submissions must receive prior approval by the board, including but not limited to changes in locations of structures, roads, parking, vehicle entrance and exit, wells, wastewater systems, etc. So basically what we're saying here is what you get approved is what you get approved, not above and beyond.
Now, when this work is done, you people inspect everything to make sure it's up to what they filed for?
The CEO has
Yes,
that role. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, a second. We've had some discussion. We've talked about standard conditions and the existing conditions. Are there any other questions or comments at this time? No. Our recording is going, so even if Nick is not here, we will be able to, this is all legitimate. So all those in favor? So approved. Thank you very, very much. Okay, so this, I believe I not missed anything. This goes back with you. This is the original that goes there. Yeah. So at some point we'll hear from you what the condition, right?
Okay.
We'll hear that you have used something. Okay.
You'll hear that.
You'll have used something to impede traffic.
Yes. Yeah. So, should I get a sketch to Gary?
No, you don't think you need to.
Okay.
You have that condition.
Okay. Okay, so we're,
You're good.
the paperwork is done.
So I think it would be advisable though that they get something in writing with what that condition is.
Right. Nick will provide that.
Okay. A copy of the minutes will be fine.
Thank you very much for doing that. I know it's a lot because there's other stuff going on. So, good to you. I'm not his boss, so I can't tell him that.
I'll stick Danny on you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Next.
Chairman, well, I think it's a point of order.
Yes.
I think I'm old business and not new business. I don't think
Yes.
it'll take very long.
Totally agree, Parish, and that was something we mentioned before we started, was that your item is actually old business. So we'd like to take your item, please, if we may.
I shall be brief.
Okay, so next item up, Parish Manson.
My name is Parish Manson. I work for K&K Land Surveyors in Oakland, Maine. I'm here on behalf of Colin and Carol Franklin, who have a house for sale on Route 8, just above Taylor Woods Road. I was here the first meeting in December. The problem that has arisen is the bank for the buyer of the lot that the Franklins want to sell. The lawyer has come to the conclusion that he believes this is a subdivision, this one conveyance. And so I brought in a pre-application sketch, is what I believe it's called, and there was a discussion that went back and forth as to whether or not this conveyance was in fact a subdivision. And the board's decision was to submit the matter to the town's attorney, I'm not sure who, and they asked me to submit the lawyer's opinions. There was another batch of lawyers on the other side who said it was not a subdivision. It took me 2 weeks to get them in here. I wanted it to be one, but the lawyers held me up. It was getting to be Christmas. Approximately a month ago, my understanding is that request went out to the town's attorney. I'm not sure who the attorney is. My question is, have you heard back? The rumor is that you haven't. And if that is in fact the case, my only request tonight is that someone please ask those attorneys to get that opinion back to us.
Okay,
That's it.
so I have not heard back. Nick, do you know? Okay. So
Who was the lawyer?
I don't think, it was my understanding from last meeting that we were gonna get letters, and then I was gonna send out, I think, so I haven't recontacted the attorneys yet, but I can do that tomorrow. At least, I don't believe it.
Well, typically what we do when we're asking for a legal opinion is we'll draft a letter of our own. We won't just send them blind information.
Right.
And I submitted our information. What was the date of the second meeting in December?
It would have been,
I believe I brought the information in that day. And my understanding was that it had been sent out.
I'm sorry, no,
okay, so our action is to send it to the attorneys. Well, we'll draft a letter and send it to the attorneys.
Okay. Please, if you don't have the information, if you can't find it, it was in an email to Gary, I believe.
This information, the letters? that
Yes.
We all got this. Everybody's got this.
no, we need a letter to send to the attorneys, so I don't have a letter from the board to send to the attorney, I think that's,
Well, that's what we typically do. I'm not saying that, you know, I don't know, maybe this is, well, it isn't self-explanatory to me.
I think you need to check with Dennis, because I seem to recall Dennis telling me that he sent something for K&K to the attorneys. So before you generate a letter, talk to Dennis,
I will,
okay?
Good advice.
I think that happened already.
okay.
Dennis may have already heard back. I don't know that for a fact. Talk to Dennis.
Oh, yep.
But if he hasn't, I mean, we don't want to delay this any longer.
If he has heard, we need to know what it is. If he has not, we need to
I'm
have.
pretty sure he has said something.
Yeah.
Okay.
He mentioned something about it this evening.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I can go back to my email. I know I thought I had an email from him that said he sent it out. This was in December sometime.
Yes.
Sent something out,
I'm pretty sure he did.
to our town attorneys.
Well, I know it didn't go to my wife, so.
It wasn't going to MMA. It was
Oh, it was going to the oh, so we're paying bucks on the taxpayer money on this.
Yep. I think it happened.
Okay, so can we get confirmation?
Yes, that'll be the first thing.
Thank you. All right.
I should call you.
Yes.
Call me, yes.
I'll leave you alone until Monday. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Parish. Okay. Next up, we have new business. This is Ben Morrison. Ben Morrison?
I guess what I'm gonna have to do, and I'm sorry, we've got several abutters here that have some questions and concerns.
Okay.
But the Morrisons aren't.
Okay.
They knew they were supposed to be here.
I called them.
Were they on the
I sent an
agenda?
email.
Were they on the agenda the same as Janet when it was canceled because of the
Yes.
snowstorm? Okay. They knew they were supposed to be here and they're not here. What this is it was actually an enforcement action. We were gonna take legal action.
Gary, can you speak a little
I'm
louder
sorry.
towards me? I have a little hearing
Yeah,
problem.
I said it was actually an enforcement action on behalf of the town. We were gonna, we have the attorney notify him because he's spilled over beyond the area that was originally approved. Okay? He's created an area that's approximately 200 by 250 feet where he's storing vehicles that are waiting to be sold.
Yeah.
said, the neighbors have concerns. These neighbors brought it to my attention. It's a little difficult to see off the road. It's kind of set back. But they need to be here.
They do. I mean, I don't feel comfortable.
They need to be here.
Yeah, making any decisions without the applicants here to answer questions.
That's great, so we've sat here for an hour and a half, and they're not here, and now we have to come back on another night for another long wait. So what exactly have you guys been trying to do?
I sent them a letter telling him way back that they needed to come before the planning board. I sent him a second letter, and it didn't happen again. So the town attorney sent him a letter, and that's when he brought the application in. Okay.
And I got a chance to look over and stuff, and I would question some of his answers on that about storage of materials. We're concerned about our well water.
And you all get a chance to voice all your concerns.
But I can voice my concern, but is there somebody that's gonna be able to look, I mean, he can say, oh, there's not a problem, we're not gonna store stuff, and I have a doubt, so what will the next step be?
If the planning board puts conditions on his application that he only store certain amounts of this or certain amounts of that, if that's placed on his condition of approval, then I can inspect that at any time to make sure he's in compliance.
We're close by, so.
Right, not far away.
So he hasn't responded until finally he has now.
When he got the letter from the town attorney saying we were gonna take him to court, is when he brought the application in. And I know that when you go through the application, you're gonna see that there's some things that are probably missing.
Yep.
But he had a deadline, and it was critical that the town get that application by a certain deadline. So at least we got him to get that here.
Okay.
I'm sure that you're gonna find some things incomplete. And I don't know if you'd even look at it as a brand new application or an amendment to the original. I'm not even
Well, that was a question I had. I can't really tell, frankly, from this application. I mean, among other things, the drawing leaves something to be desired.
I agree.
Not to mention it's not the scale and nowhere comes close to meeting the requirements of the ordinance, but is this that, significantly larger in scope than what was originally approved? I mean, I drove by there and, there's cars everywhere, but.
Yeah, if you drive by where the garage and the old house is, you'll see where his cars are. That's really what you approved.
Right.
Just beyond that, you look, and there's a roadway that goes out back.
Yeah, I saw that.
And if you look down that road, you'll see how many cars?
Oh, hundreds. She sits up on the top of the hill and looks down. Not to mention the fact that they're encroaching on her property by building shacks and sheds on her property. She can see it. If you drive up her driveway and go to her backyard, and you can get a bird's eye view.
I know
there are hundreds of cars out there in leaking oiled stages. I mean, let's get real. There's no way that the EPA would approve anything that's happening out there. And that's directly feeding into our wells.
Is he at auto sales or a junkyard or
He's
what is his?
He's approved for an auto sales.
Right.
Motor vehicle has a rule that says that there can't be a car placed on the property more than 90 days.
Well, he's broken.
Yeah, 100 times
That's placed there to be sold.
Let's call a spade a spade. That place is a junk.
That's a state law. The state can.
Well, they should get involved.
You need to let them know. Well, somebody needs to.
The town can?
Yeah, we can, but I'm sure.
I would appreciate
I'm sure that nobody has.
So would you then, I mean, I'm officially, formally asking Gary Fuller, would you please contact the state about this? Because I can tell you right now, it's not gonna pass any kind of state standards at all. And there are way more than a few cars, and they're not moving out there that fast, they're all over 90 days. It is a junkyard. I don't care that he's hidden it from sight, it is a junkyard. And I worry about the quality of the water that we drink from our wells and stuff, and never mind the noise level and the increased traffic. There it says, no appreciable increase in traffic. Come sit in my driveway for a while, guys.
Yeah, it is a hazard. You all know where that corner is. He has tow trucks parked out there unloading large vehicles. Someone's gonna get killed at some point coming around that corner.
Oh, I know, I mean,
It's
I,
totally
like you,
inappropriate.
I said,
So please contact the
I
state.
live there, I know, the road is literally covered with black marks, rubber.
Yeah,
Where they
yeah, well, that's a whole
Test
nother
drive
thing.
race cars and, I know.
I mean, that happened
Jimmy's
before they were
doing
a junkyard too, though, I mean, that happened when the kids were growing up. The bigger issue, though, is the safety of other people traveling down the road. People come down the hill either side or come around the corner and stuff. They had a truck parked there with a little kid in it one time, just sitting on the side of the road for 10 or 15 minutes. Never mind the fact that they turn around in my driveway all the time, and they have dug up the end of our driveway. So, I mean, it is a.
Are you right across the street?
No,
right
we're
next
next door. We're right next door. You know where the blue garage is, that long driveway? That's my driveway.
Going towards the Knowles Road, towards the Manchester Road.
You know, since we don't have the applicant here,
No,
I don't know,
you really need to table it up. Yeah, we'll have to find out.
although I'm sensitive to the fact that these folks showed up and have been sitting
Yes,
here.
and that's,
An
But
hour
I
and a
don't-
half.
But, you know,
that's another,
I'm a little concerned that if we invite you to tell us what you are concerned about now, that we somehow undermine the process such that it would allow any decision we make to be challenged without them being here.
Well, why aren't they here then?
I don't, I can't answer why they're not here.
Yeah.
I can answer to you why I didn't turn to you an hour ago and tell you they weren't here.
You thought they
Because
were gonna show up.
they know where they are on the agenda, and they may have looked at the agenda and said, oh, wait a second, we don't need to be there till 8 o'clock.
Yeah, no, that's
I
fine, I
have no
understand
control
that.
over that.
Yeah, right, that's not.
So,
Well, one thing that could come out of this that would make me feel a little better is if you would contact the state to have them step in and take a look at that, because I think that's gonna probably eliminate a lot of our questions and concerns. And I have to say truthfully too, we both talked about this a little bit, we're a little intimidated by them. They have a history of stealing from people in the neighborhood, everybody in the neighborhood knows that, and we're a little concerned about, you know, any kind of retaliation. So we'll probably be a lot calmer when they're in the room next time, but I still have the same concerns.
How close is your well to where they're storing vehicles? Your drinking water supply well?
it was over 300, because I remember they measured it.
Yeah, he came
Well,
on
they're
our
initial-
property and measured it without asking,
Yeah, no, that.
but let's not go there too.
Yep. Just went over
For this application or the last
The
one?
last one. Last one.
The
So,
planning board asked that
Yes, no, I-
they provide that, and it was,
Yeah, no.
it was 340 feet a second.
Okay.
right, so so I guess to sort of carry on what George is asking is this new activity that's happening on their property, is it getting closer to your well?
No,
No.
I don't think so.
Because I'm just not familiar with the property.
Well, I have to ask you, when he measured, where was he measuring from?
It's supposed to be from the garage where he's doing auto repair.
Because our concern previously was releases of waste oil, waste gasoline, storage of all the above, degreasers.
Right.
State law requires a 300-foot buffer from those kinds of activities to the nearest private drinking water supply well. If it triggered state law, our ordinance is written such that we can, we can't do anything until they get the necessary approval from Maine DEP.
How close are they to your well? They must be closer to your
well, on
place.
my property, I don't know, yeah, it's probably at least 300. But I'm just concerned about their total disregard for laws and rules and regulations, and it ain't gonna matter what you guys say or what you guys do.
They do what they want.
They do what they
Well,
want.
they
Well,
obviously have.
I mean, that's, let's face it, I mean, you know, they didn't do what
Them
they
not
got
being here
approval
is a
for,
perfect
right?
Yeah,
example.
exactly, so that's my example.
Well, I will tell you this, and I told you this before, when they initially went to the planning board for their original approval, I said to the planning board myself, I know this family has a reputation, I would certainly hope that you would drive by the property and place some conditions on it. There was absolutely no conditions placed on the approval, as I told you and I showed you. So, I have no control over that, but perhaps this time there should be. As to the number of cars, as to the length of time they can remain there and other things.
Hours of operation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think they pretty much
Unless they-
start at noon and go till midnight
yep,
Right.
because they sleep the morning.
And I absolutely want no painting in that garage. I went through that with their father about 25 years ago. And I'm
it's
not
like a
gonna
direct,
repeat
the
that.
vent goes directly into our yard with all the toxic fumes, so they shouldn't be doing any kind of painting. They have a big vent on the back of their garage, and it goes right into our yard,
Are they
right towards
doing,
our
are
house.
they doing that now?
Nope, they haven't, but I just wanna make sure that doesn't happen. And in all honesty, since he's put all those cars in there, I am sure that the value of my property has dropped considerably, and I want that taken a look at before taxes come out this year, because I missed the deadline, because they had already done the mill rate stuff, but I would expect that my property taxes are probably gonna go down, because my value has certainly gone down.
Gary, in your discussions with Dennis, the town manager, have you guys talked about, never mind, this is not an appropriate question in the public record, but I was gonna, what happens, I assume what happens if they never file a complete application, nothing that the planning board can approve or deny or do anything else with.
And they keep doing what they're doing.
It continues to be an open enforcement case, right?
Do you want to see the letter that the town attorney wrote?
No, I'm just asking.
The town attorney essentially sent a letter saying you've got X amount of days to bring an application to Belgrade town office, or we will take legal action. But, did I answer your question?
Well, yeah, sort of, I guess, I guess the question was, when does that trigger get pulled?
Right.
Good question.
I lost 2.5 hours of work tonight to come here.
Was they scheduled at the same time as Janet and there was a snowstorm? Is that what
No.
occurred?
Yeah.
No, the paper we got said tonight. It didn't say last night when the storm happened and got rescheduled. This was the day we were given.
I sent out 2,
No, we got one, and it was
I only got
today's.
one too.
And it was today's date. We have it.
And you sent Janet's, the abutters, on 2 different occasions, but you did not Ben's.
I didn't.
I don't think you did.
Well, procedurally,
Okay.
What-
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because they forgot to.
what,
It's okay.
well, you heard how we kind of screwed up on the last application, right? We failed to provide the notice that's required under the ordinance, partly because the prior ordinance didn't have any public notification at all, but it's supposed to happen once we have a complete application. In this case, we don't even have anything close to a complete application, in my own personal opinion. But it's just as well that you're involved right from the get-go, because there's just only so much. I mean, at the end of the day, we tend to have to believe what people give us for information, unless we have some reason not to.
Well, you've got a reason not to now.
So,
I mean, if you're scheduled to appear before the planning board on a certain date and there's a snowstorm, it's your obligation to find out when the next meeting is. It's not Nick's obligation to notify the applicant and say, hey, it snowed, you gotta come in at such and such a time. I mean, if you have to hold their hand, then maybe we need to do that with these folks, but normally you would not.
well, and we did under the last time.
We did. We were very gracious in getting them through the process. And it took a number of attempts to get there.
So when is it going to be nice and help me?
I am going to talk to Dennis tomorrow. We'll get a contact so the state can go investigate.
Please do.
I will call them and let them know that they missed the meeting they were supposed to be at, and they need to put a little more effort into their application prior to me rescheduling that meeting. And it needs to be ASAP, not 90 days out.
Just for clarity's sake, Gary, who which agency deals with cars? Is
it Bureau of Motor, BMV?
Is it BMV? So that's under the Secretary of State. So I'm only asking that just so everybody hears it, right? So
I think you BMV, but I'll verify that with Dennis.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
I believe that's the correct
I think so.
route to go. So I'm just saying that so that should Gary be directed to go to BMV about this particular case, that perhaps if you get a written response, I'm just asking via email, you can forward it out to those who are interested to say, this is a response gotten from BMV. Just so you, just to help set expectations. I'm not sure who it is at any of the.
At this point, I don't care as long as somebody from the state is notified, because I have no doubt that if the appropriate body finds out what's going on there, there will be some hue and raised up.
Sure.
This is above and beyond the purview of the town, but if you're truly concerned about the quality of your water, I would highly recommend you collect samples and have it tested at the public health lab. They have a special test for it.
I do every year, yeah.
And you have it, but isn't just the general test, you have to get the petroleum test.
A petroleum test?
Yeah, petroleum. I mean, if your concern is, you know, waste oil and leaking gasoline, that's what you need to get, because it's different than the basic test, which is just for bacteria and a few metals and arsenic.
Okay.
Because it won't.
Well, there are wetlands behind us, and in looking at his drawing, he says that no wetlands are affected, and I kind of doubt that, because the whole, I mean, you don't have to go very far into our backyard and it's wet, and so it must be behind his property too. So I'm not really 100% sure how honest he's being about all of that stuff.
If your laboratory results come back positive, contact the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. They have a unit that deals with these kinds of cases.
Yes. Right. But I'm going to wait first and have Gary go through his steps, because I'm sure that test is probably very expensive. So I would just.
It's around $100, but you know, it's a question of how much due diligence you want to do yourself.
And you mentioned the parking. I can't remember who mentioned it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. They park
it's
on
very
the side
dangerous.
of the main road. And I
So,
don't mean the side, because there's a huge ditch, and they're
in the road.
at least a quarter into the road. Enough so people have to stop and let other people pass.
So to me, that sounds like a parking and safety issue, which on the roadways in Belgrade would be not a town issue, as I understand it. Gary, correct me.
Oh, I have called before the police department, but by the time they send somebody over, they've moved the vehicle, because, the cops aren't sitting there waiting.
Right.
It's just like when they were dealing drugs 20 years ago, before they all got sent to prison. We called the police every single night, the cars that came and went stuff, and it took them quite a few years before they did a big sting operation and caught them all.
Yeah,
Sent them off to jail for 10 quiet years, remember that?
Yeah, they sat in our driveway night after night, unmarked cars hidden way up in our driveway.
So, we can call and complain about the parking on the side of the road, but unless the police happen to catch them, and what they're gonna do is speak to them about it. And then, of course, they know who's called.
I've seen them offloading vehicles that I assume they bought at auction.
Yep.
With a ramp truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, every night.
And they turn around in my driveway oftentimes.
Do they?
Yep.
And we spoke.
The end of my driveway is all dug up, and it was just redone when they did the roads this last summer and stuff, and it was beautiful. It was the same level as the road and everything, and now there's a huge divot in it.
Well, I've worked on it since.
I know, but it's still there. Yes, you did, honey.
So at this point, speaking for the board, there's no action that we can take tonight. So I wanted to thank you all for attending. I apologize that the applicants didn't show when they were instructed to show. And then we get to this point where we can't take any action. That probably doesn't feel very satisfying to you, but we have no control over what anybody else will do.
At least we got to voice our frustrations.
Well, I'm satisfied in the fact you're gonna contact the state, because I bet my life on it that at least 3/4 of those vehicles have not been moved in 90 days.
Yeah.
There's no way.
90 years.
No way.
Not in a couple of years, not since he started piling them in there.
But thank you for your efforts.
Are you welcome?
Peter, we should, while these folks are here, talk a little bit about our schedule going forward, because we also got the shoreline zoning ordinance that got bumped as a result of the snow storm.
So, right, it's a good point.
So that they have some sense of when this might be on the agenda again.
Right. So what we have been doing is we have 2 meetings a month, right? One on the first Thursday of the month, and the second meeting's on the third Thursday of the month. That's our typical schedule. And we have normally held business meetings to attend to applications such as this on the first meeting. And the second meeting of the month, we've reserved, if you will, time to allow for shoreline zone ordinance revisions that we're currently doing. And we're nearing completion on that, although we're not entirely done. We still have some more work to do, although we're at the end of it. So, but I say that, as George mentioned, to help set expectations, because in February, which is not that far from now, we'll, I think, unless we get hit by other storms, trying to resume that same schedule. So thinking ahead, unless we hear you, this application, first meeting in February, and Gary, I don't know if that's gonna happen.
I'm not gonna reschedule the application until he polishes up the application he's
Yeah.
given us, because it's a waste of time.
It is. So effectively, it may be March before we get this application again. After Gary's consulted with them and said, we need to have this to be complete so the board can take action on it, as compared to something that we have seen before.
Well, maybe something will happen with the state before then too.
Perhaps so. But I just wanted to help inform you all as to what we might expect. And then naturally we try to do more shoreline zone ordinance revisions and get that to a state where we can bring it to the voters to either approve or not. That's a big effort for us, so we're trying to do that.
This is a question for Nick. I was just wondering, as a courtesy, we have the formal notice that we have to give once we have a complete application, if we ever have a complete application. But I was wondering if there was a way to send these folks an email each when it's back on the agenda, so that they know.
Yep, that'd be great.
Did you guys get that sign-out sheet then?
Yeah, I'll put my email on this. I didn't put my email on there.
Right next to your-
Is that okay with you?
I will now.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that. It's going the extra mile. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And all of them?
What's that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So until this is resolved, he just continues on the way he can,
I'm going to talk hopefully with the state tomorrow.
I don't even know, I don't have an email. I need to get it in the mail.
I can send you one.
Good. Okay. I'm not good with computers.
Are there other neighbors or people in the neighborhood that are also concerned?
They weren't here.
I think, yes.
Oh, so
but I
you
think-
are the neighborhood?
Well, Sean
I think there
O'Connor-
is, but I think people are intimidated,
Very
like
much
she
so.
said, and they're scared to come here because they think if they do, they're gonna get broken into or terrorized. And I'm one of them.
Yeah.
So, I
Well,
mean,
thank you for coming.
I was gonna say, it took a lot to be able to come here and voice our concerns. It's one thing to meet somebody and
I'm
talk
kinda glad
quietly in
he's
an
not
office,
here.
but- Well, but we're gonna have to face him
Right.
eventually. And I won't be so venomous when he's here, but I do have real big concerns. People, you think I can't be nice?
Push one button.
But there is Sean O'Connor who lives across from us, and, you know, he's,
He's basically hands off too, because he said he doesn't want any trouble with.
Right.
Well, everybody within 500 feet, if we get to the point of a complete application will get a written notification.
And now how about renters? Because Sean has 2 trailers next to him that are renters. Will they get notified?
No, that goes to property owner.
Yeah.
I told you.
We don't have a list of who the tenants are.
But I would be within my rights to go over and let them know and
Absolutely.
invite them.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I do know that Rich next door had some concerns about the
Yeah,
speed, because
that's
he's got kids in his house. And
Yeah, that's right.
he was concerned about the traffic and the speed.
Yeah, that's right.
So I want to make clear to the audience that the planning board would, in the event of getting a complete application, our authority is not with enforcement. It's all about process, trying to check off boxes, make sure that what's submitted is accurate. And then eventually when things are approved, you might have heard one of the standard conditions that we talked about tonight for commercial development review. Basically, the second one talks about what's approved is all that's approved, not other stuff. And that we're trying to be as upfront with people about any or all of these things to help set expectations. Because we have limits. Our volunteer organization is just trying to make sure we're doing things in accordance with the law.
So what happens if he gets approval for X and then he ends up doing X, Y, so he's gone beyond and stuff? What is the next step? I know the towns are loath to spend money to, call in police to haul stuff away, but.
It could in fact go to an enforcement and then some sort of legal action where lawyers would be used, our town attorney.
Okay.
And that does cost money,
And his penalty will be whatever the judge says it is at that point.
Correct, which could, I'm speaking out of turn here, but I'm gonna say it anyway, it could include reimbursing the town for their expenses.
Well, good luck getting money out of him. Unless he sells some drugs.
Right, but that's not my call.
Right.
So does that help, at least let you know
Yep.
our schedule, what our plans are?
Yeah, that's fine, so we're not gonna start worrying until March if we haven't heard from you.
Okay, all right.
And Gary will get back in touch with us with whatever he finds out. And you will notify us when the next meeting is.
Yes.
And we can swap numbers and I can call you too.
So I'd like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank you for taking time out of your busy days to come in tonight to talk about this. Really appreciate it. I heard you say you had to miss 2.5 hours of work tonight, so I really appreciate what you did to come in, and especially in light of
Circumstances.
Volatile circumstances,
Right.
or unappealing circumstances. It takes a lot of courage, so thank you very much for doing that and coming in tonight. Really appreciate all of you coming in, the neighborhood coming in. So at this time, we would have no more business with this particular agenda item. You're welcome to stay if you want. We don't really have much more to
Past my
go.
bedtime.
As titillating as it is.
Yeah, I know.
Well, we thank you for your service too. I mean, volunteer groups, it's hard.
It's tremendous requirement. So, for our agenda, the last one, then the site location tonight.
Yeah, I know Dennis talked about that, the site location.
Yes.
It's just a quick.
I know that it was brought to Dennis's attention that the sign that was relocated
Yes.
required planning board approval.
Yes.
Dennis's question is, what do you need? Do you want me to start this whole process and fill out an entire application again?
I would say no.
I think a letter,
Okay.
and
Dimensions.
yeah, just and a sketch showing its proximity to the state right of way.
Okay.
Because that's really, it is my take.
That's it in a nutshell from my perspective too. Something changed after approval. We need to have.
Is that sign in the right of way? Boy, it looks like it.
Hometown lot.
Yeah.
Truthfully, I think it is.
It could be.
I can't remember the exact standard, but it's actually from, I think, the edge of the pavement is the footage standard.
If I remember right, when Steve was here for his application for the beauty shop, the state had taken a lot of that right away way back.
Well, yeah, and Steve bought it back since then. Steve purchased that back from the state.
Steve has, but has
Yeah.
30, the standard is 33, at least 33 feet from the center line.
Right, but
That's the standard.
that's the standard.
Our standard.
That's our standard, but if, maybe we should have gave that a little more thought, because this is a 100-foot right-of-way.
Yeah.
So if you're 33 feet from the center line, the right-of-way is 50, you're in the right-of-way.
Yeah.
Correct.
But I'm pretty sure, and I'll ask Dennis, Dennis has been working with DOT, and I think he got approval to place that there, because it is in the right-of-way, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's in the right
I
of way.
think it is.
But he said,
Well, if, I don't know if that's the case, then maybe having a copy of that approval might be handy
Yes.
Okay,
Be good.
so I'll
as
have
part of
Dennis,
that amendment.
I'll have Dennis generate a letter. Sketch plan,
Yep.
okay.
Good night.
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Gary. We'll look forward to hearing from you, honey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sketch plan and, what else?
Copy that.
Oh, DOT letter.
I think that'd be sufficient, because then that would address, basically the location. So we have it on record, to say, hey, it was here, it moved, it's either is or is not in the right of way.
Okay.
Be really cool if it was not in the right of way.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he got approval to put it in the right of way.
As long as you get approved.
I think he did. I know he got approval.
Well, it'll be one of the few signs in town that's in the right of way that had DOT approval.
Right. Right.
So, good. So that addresses that, Gary, that would be most helpful.
Yeah, he asked me to ask you.
Okay.
I believe what he said at the select board's meeting was that originally somebody at DOT had been consulted and said the sign had to be where it originally was. Somebody else in DOT said that doesn't apply anymore. You can put it anywhere you want within, and gave them some kind of
Dimensions,
dimensions,
edge
yeah.
of the pavement, right?
Yeah, I think it was edge of pavement.
I mean, this 33 feet is a standard I've seen in other town ordinances. It's pretty common. From the center line makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't reflect the fact that different roads are in travel lanes or, what if that was double lane,
Right.
One of the things that I see as a benefit to that, though, I've had so many instances, both in Sydney, I've had them in Augusta, I've had them in Belgrade, where you can specify, and I've told the board this, you can specify to an applicant, you have to be X amount of feet from the right of way. And
yeah,
I've seen so many after the fact variances because they don't know where the right of way is. So what we did in Sydney is we said, okay, we're gonna pick a number that's big enough so you're well outside the right of way. So we say, for instance, 75 feet from the center line.
Right.
And anybody can measure that yellow line, 75 feet. It's pretty hard to go wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I talked about that when these ordinances were being written. It didn't matter, but it was just, I do see some benefit to it.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Okay, well, thanks, Gary. So with that one, we'll look forward to hearing back. Updates from your corner of the world.
One thing I wanted to talk about, and I think I'm correct on this. These applicants that were scheduled for a particular meeting and we had a snowstorm, Nick went and re-notified all the abutters over again, and I said, I don't believe you have to do that. I think if you've been notified of a meeting and that meeting's canceled for a snowstorm, I think it's your obligation to find out when it will be rescheduled. I don't think we have to notify them twice. But I just was asking your opinion, I don't know if I'm correct.
Yeah, because this is, the notification burden is placed on the town, correct?
Yeah.
Initially. So in my opinion, if an event like a snowstorm coming up, I'm thinking, well, the burden still rests on the town. So, but I could be wrong. Maybe that's not the right way to think about it. Because that puts more work on you. You didn't ask for more work, right? But, so thank you for going above and beyond, before. I don't know how the other board members feel about it.
I think the ordinance basically is kind of silent.
It is, I think.
On the issue, and so you're right, it's the town's responsibility, burden. It might be more of a matter of keeping good faith with the public. And
I mean, what I'm thinking is, Ben Morrison, all his abutters were notified on 2 different occasions. But he probably wasn't, and probably you have to hold his hand, so he should have been told too.
Well, there's no requirement that we're supposed to.
I know.
Can you guys close this meeting without me, or do I need to be here?
No, we have a form.
Can I just have a quick question? So when I get commercial off paper here, I don't send out notices until I see it deemed as complete. Is that correct? What should I say is complete? If you have to email another meeting to approve that, and that's when it's set up.
Right, that's technically
So I said
what.
well prematurely for this application. Maybe it was.
Yes, but I think it might have been it was unfortunate for them, but actually I found it beneficial to hear, that there's a lot more to this than meets the eye, at least for somebody like myself that just looking at what's on paper.
Does the applicant get billed for?
Yeah, I'll be sending a bill to Jan and Ben when the actual meeting is going to happen. The second notification, so send them bill after that. So.
Because you don't know what the cost is at this point?
Right, I would have to, because when I have to notify them for the next meeting, so I already notified them for this meeting, you just said I wouldn't have to notify them again.
Well, no,
Is that?
In the event of a snowstorm, I think the next time we need to notify.
Okay, yeah, so I'll have to bill.
Yeah.
Or bill.
This is what they do, and it's entirely up to you. This is what we do in Sydney. When you come to the planning board, first of all, every application goes twice. Okay? Every application goes to the planning board. Initially, tells them what they want to do. The town notifies the abutters, and the applicants come back for a second meeting. And at the end of the discussion at the second meeting, the town planning board approves the application, and the applicant, they tell the applicant right then, okay, you owe da-da-da-da for postage, and they pay him right then. I mean, it saves them writing a bill and whatever.
I mean, I think there's some benefit to having that pause in between there. I know it's inconvenient for the applicants. I think we've kind of, raised the bar in rushing some of these things through, not rushing, but, trying to do these things in one meeting in the past, particularly under the old ordinance that certainly was convenient for the applicant, but, I'm not sure. It always made me worry about something that we may have forgotten that you might have thought of if there'd been a little bit of a time break there. So this requirement forces our hand to, now the problem's going to be, just as the problem was with the goods, is, okay, the first application was incomplete. So they come back at another meeting with in their case, finally a complete application. Well, it was in that interim period that because Gary told us, reminded us to, don't forget the notice. Well, of course, we forgot because of the intermeeting, couple weeks or whatever it was, or more. But we should expect that there may be other circumstances like that where we're going to have 3 meetings to finally get to an approval. we're gonna have the first one where the incomplete application comes in.
Which is my fault, you shouldn't have those.
Yeah, but
That's
I-
my fault.
But I think, well, all of us recognize reality in terms of your time.
Well, I have more time now.
And to the extent that happens in the future, you know, we're gonna come to that second meeting and we're gonna have a complete application. We've gone through the checklist and then we're gonna have to call it good. You know, we're gonna have to say, and now we have to give notice to the public.
Right.
And, you know, you'll be at our next meeting.
Yeah.
And some people will be mad about that.
Some very well may be.
And that's just, you know,
Well, we
the way
can
it
point,
is.
but I think now, as we're now living with the new ordinance, which has that new inclusion of notification, we can reference that to help set expectations when we indicate that what is submitted is complete. That's a new reality for us. We haven't lived that way before.
Well, and for the applicants.
Right.
The only application that I've ever seen come in for the commercial development review that's complete is done by an engineer.
Right.
Right.
Right. Hammonds, the towns.
Anything that Elliot does or Andy
Don't-
does.
right.
It's complete. Yeah, they're very thorough.
I mean, the goods was sort of an oddball because it was started under the old application and ordinance, so
Right.
that added confusion.
So we're living with a new reality relative to this, and I think we'll get a real handle on having a complete submission form in front of us to say, okay, we deem it complete, notify the abutters, see you next time. That's what it's gonna have to be, so.
Yep.
So anything else, Gary, from the CEO?
I don't think so.
No.
Do you have much in the way of applications building up, or?
No, we have,
Another commercial.
I do have a complete application from Andy Dunbar for Sean Grant's Marina.
Oh,
Okay. All right. So with that one, just like we're talking about, so if we think it's complete, when we go through it and say that it's complete, then at that point, we would then be saying, notify the abutter, so that automatically gets to a second meeting before that would be decision made on that.
That's fine, right?
So, yeah, and just as long as Sean knows, I mean, we're kind of going through this now and getting a handle on it, but.
I've been after Sean since this spring to get this into me, so he's not in a hurry.
The butters have been notified, just because I'm sure, but now I know, so.
Okay, good. All right.
And Dennis's question was, in that packet, did you see a permit from DEP? And I thought I did, but I went through it and I said, I don't see one. So I asked Andy tonight, and Andy said, no, hold on. The marina is opposite side of the road from what was previously approved. That's where we needed a DEP permit, because we placed some fill.
Okay.
I don't need a DEP permit over there. I guess Dennis didn't understand that.
Okay.
Dennis also said that he believes they needed a permit from the Department of Conservation, and Andy said, no, that's not accurate.
Was there a boathouse or something?
No, there's boat slips.
Boat slips? Oh, yeah, you may be thinking.
the lease,
Yeah.
the lease below normal high water mark,
Which was a conservation.
which is basically filling out a piece of paper.
Right. Dennis knows what's there, he's been there. I don't know. So anyway, that will be before you.
Okay.
The other application I have is Alan Jagger down on Sandy Cove. We've been dealing with him since this fall. He extended his deck. He tore his deck off and built a new one 2 feet closer to the water.
Mm-hmm.
He did a dock, freestanding deck, right on the water's edge. He did another deck on a building that's way back from the water. None of it with permits. DEP's been involved, I've been involved. Since that time, he's removed the 2 feet of the deck that was too big, He's removed another piece of deck. He's removed that deck near the water. He's done everything that we've asked him to do. And now he's coming to the board for an after-the-fact permit.
Where is this located?
Sandy Cove. Sandy Cove. So I get that application and Sean grants, so far.
Okay.
So Peter, are we gonna go back, sort of reset the clock, and the first meeting in February is gonna be for permits, for these permits, and then the following meeting will be for shoreline zoning?
Well, we haven't talked about it, but that's what I was thinking. Does that make sense?
Well, given what Gary just told us, it would seem to me, I know it pushes back shoreline zoning by a month, but
It does. So
but I don't see where we.
Wait a minute, what are we saying? We're still keeping the third meeting, the second meeting of the month for ordinance stuff? Is that right?
Right, yeah, right.
George's question has to do with timings, considering we had no first meeting in January. And then the second meeting in January is taken up with the application stuff, so we've done nothing with shoreline zone stuff in January. That pushes that back a month. This question is based on fairness to the work in shoreline zones, ordinance stuff. My suggestion is that we continue on and be true to our form. Application is the first meeting.
Yeah, because that's what I've told both applicants.
All right.
We haven't talked about it. This is now.
Then that's, I think, what we should do.
So we're in alignment with what you said, so if you guys agree, I think that would be fair to the other business, I think, because that is our number one priority. Town business. Well, before I ask a question about that, I'm curious, down, going to Alina Shores, there was the garage and all that stuff.
George Brown.
Yeah, George Brown. Is there any more activity going on there or strife or anything?
Yeah, I guess a group of neighbors have hired a lawyer and they're taking it to court.
It's good.
Yeah.
A little economic activity.
Yeah.
Lawyers don't make enough money.
I know. Hope they're Belgrade lawyers. Yeah. Anyway, so there's that one. Then the other part was if you go straight and then take the left and go out there, that it's another point that if you're at George Brown's and looking across the way, you'd see that other point, and we approved.
Recently?
Yeah, it was in late summer. A bill because the people had purchased the land and they wanted to.
A young couple.
Yes.
Yes.
So is
It's under construction.
It is, okay.
And it's cold out there.
It's gotta be cold.
I bet.
Yeah, which is elbow, right, out there. No protection whatsoever and totally high visibility. So I didn't know if it's under construction, if the town's receiving comments at all.
I'm actually going down tomorrow. I haven't been down recently.
Okay.
Last time I was down there, the foundation was in and the plumbing was roughed in.
Okay.
I don't know if they've started framing it.
Speaking of foundations, going to work today, across from Hannah's garage. Yeah.
Yep.
So there's construction going on.
Yeah, they're replacing the garage that they tore down.
Right.
And that was part of the permit we issued previously, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I wasn't sure if that was new or, what's that?
It seemed like it's been a while since we thought about it, so.
Well, and I couldn't tell if that'd been there a while and I just noticed it because the snow melted or it was something new.
They just set the forms today.
Oh, they did?
They poured the footings a month ago and they set the forms today.
Yeah. Because I saw them before.
Gary, I hate to always hassle you about this, but has anything happened with that one on Salmon Lake?
Nope, and it's going to have to wait until spring. I can't get down there.
All right.
By the time, if I had forgot about it, I had told you that. And by the time I said, oh damn, I gotta get down there.
Yeah.
Snow, I couldn't. So I've got a note in my to-do list and that'll be one of the first things I do in the spring.
Good.
Yeah. Lastly, well, from my end, there's some churn at the select person level.
Yeah.
There was a resignation that it didn't happen, and now apparently it has happened. And so there'll be a vacancy. When is that word effect?
March 18th.
March 18th. Okay, so that's
the town meeting, in other words.
Yeah, town
The other vacancy that's gonna come up is, I guess, Gary Mayer decided not to run again.
So that'd be two.
So that's two, we need, but if I remember right, there's a possible third one.
Bernie Murphy's spots up, perhaps.
But he's running again.
Yeah, he is running.
Kathy Wall's running,
Yeah, that's right, it was a temporary one that filled in
and,
I heard Melanie Jewell was gonna run
she never
again,
brought
but,
her papers in.
yeah, that's,
She didn't bring them in? Yesterday was the deadline.
yeah.
So, to fill Ernie's position, it'll have to be a write-in. It's too late to take out papers.
Well, I saw something on the sign actually that they established a special election and with a special deadline, end of the month or something like that.
10-day, signature gathering
Yeah,
period.
Oh, okay.
so somebody would have the opportunity to collect
Yep.
the necessary signatures and submit it, if they so wished.
So did you guys, this is not town business. You mentioned Steve Foster, you know what his hair salon is. Did you hear this last Sunday? Someone stole his dump truck right out of that driveway?
No.
I guess,
Oh my God.
I guess Steve went by in the morning and said, a dump truck's gone. Well, he thought it was one of his friends playing a practical joke, so he didn't think a hell of a lot of it. I guess by the time he called all his friends and they said, no, we wouldn't do that. He said, shit, someone stole my dump truck.
Dang. Oh, poor guy, that's terrible.
But they found it in Augusta and it's back there.
Wow.
Well, Katie, his daughter Katie, she put it on Facebook. And they found the truck, but I guess the state police said, Katie, if that ever happens again, don't put that on Facebook. Let us do our job. We may have caught the guys driving the truck. They see that on Facebook, they park the truck and run, we'll never catch them.
Right.
True.
We'll never catch them.
She's trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, at least they got the truck back though, and it wasn't burned.
Right,
that's right.
exactly. Which is
Some hunters might have to find it.
I know.
Right.
Yeah, because I was one of them that was up there.
Oh, I didn't, I
Up
guess.
in Range.
Rangeley.
Randy Kuznos.
Yeah. Oh, dump truck?
Yeah,
Sandy
I was
River.
one of the three. We were, so it was
It had been stolen.
yeah,
From Wilton?
Took it from, they were up in near that whole property,
Yeah.
Chain of Ponds area.
Because Randy's over in Wilton and Jay.
Yep. And so Sandy River Plantation's got about 10,000 acres, just above the 18.
Yeah.
So we were hunting in that area and got up and said, the equipment's not where it normally is. And we crest this hilltop and look into this beaver bog. And there's some piece of equipment, it's dim. It's on its kind of side and it's burned. Holy crap. And then go further and there's another piece of larger equipment that had thrashed all about and was all in the pucker brush and oh my gosh, it was, not good. We ended up calling the police and Randy. Yeah.
So Randy must have been cutting wood up there and he left his equipment, yeah.
Yeah, he did. And and after we got there, his crew showed up. And, they're like, they said, holy cow, kind of. They said,
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
The next group, one guy shows up, another one, same words.
They never caught the guys, I'm sure.
Well, they did.
Oh, they did?
Get this. So my brother-in-law, he was in his ATV ahead of me. We'll almost done this, right? We're driving along our ATVs going up there, and he notices this piece of paper on the ground. He picks it up and puts it in his pocket. And all this other stuff happens, and he said, "You don't know what that paper was?" He pulls it out. One of the guys that it was addressed to a guy. Lo and behold,
it was the guy.
It was the guy. Yeah. So it was from a bank about something. It had his name right on it, and so my brother hands it right to the cops and says, "We found this paper on the floor, on the ground."
So when the police went to question him, he crumbled, obviously.
Oh yeah, definitely. And there were a couple other people involved in some other stuff that's not very good, I guess. But anyway.
I got one minor thing of
Yes.
business, if that's okay.
Yes, all right, we digress.
Dennis sent us an email with attached to it a PDF of the shoreline zoning map
Yes,
that was redone, I guess a base layer map.
yes.
And I had sent them back saying, you know, I can't even see this on my computer. I don't know if you or Nick heard anything back from Dennis. I had suggested that he either get it printed out in a large paper format so we could look at it and compare it against the map that we do have, or you haven't heard anything about this, have you?
No, it's first to hear it.
Could you see if you can get that printed out?
Yes,
Because Sewell would have a plotter, they could output that. I don't think we have a plotter to do that size. I don't know. We have printers, but we don't have a plotter that would go 24 by 36 or whatever.
Okay, so you guys haven't heard anything from Dennis about it. I was just asking, basically. I mean, it would, you know, it's a great step forward. It's just that there's no way to, he was asking for comments about it, and there's no way to comment on it if you can't review it.
Right. And I don't have a good way to review it, but I have a monitor that's a 23-inch monitor, so it's not as big as full size. But I could see, when I looked at it, at least the color scheme on it allows you to understand where the zones are, if you will, and then also know where the property or the lot boundaries are. Which is, in some case, it's when the overlay's the other way, you kind of lose the lot because the zone sort of washes out the lot line. So, but that was one thing I noticed straight away, that you could distinguish. So, here's this lot, we got this zone, the zone overlaps to the next lot, and so on and so forth.
Because I didn't comment, and I also think it would be more appropriate and kosher to do that in a public forum rather than individually and private.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Since, and maybe it's part and parcel of our next shoreline zoning.
Right. So if we do get a printout, we can have it here, have it discussed in a public forum. Feedback or comments would be minuted, and we can make requests.
I have one last thing.
I have one after.
Dick, do you have one last thing?
Dennis gave me this, he said give it to the planning board. And it's a stormwater management plan, you can't vote in. Does that go with the application, or is that something you guys want to look at? Yeah.
No, what happened, see, they did a stormwater management plan, is that what that is?
That's what that is.
Okay. Al Hodgson designed it for them. It goes to DEP for approval.
Okay.
And one of the requirements is they provide the town a copy, so if the public has any desire to look at what's going on.
Oh, so that really should be kept at the front desk in case somebody, a member of the public.
Yes, it should.
Good call.
One more.
Yes, sir.
I have two new email addresses. You may want.
Could you copy these down? Yep.
It's gfuller@townofbelgrade.com. You know that one.
Yeah, I'll send it.
Also, it's gfuller@sydneymaine.org. O-R-G.
That's Sydney,
Sydney.
Maine,
Org.
Is Maine spelled out like Indiana?
Yes.
Cool. Anything else? Let's call it a wrap, everybody. 9:20.
Summertime.
Thanks. Thank you.